A billionaire was walking down the street when he saw 3 children lying on the side of the road. He approached them and decided to take them home to care for them. But when the eldest girl woke up, the billionaire was shocked. Because the house was silent, broken only by the creaking of the wind slipping through poorly closed windows. In the smallest room, Lily sat on the floor, a baby in each arm. The tiny twins squirmed restlessly, seeking the warmth only a mother could give, but their mother was no longer there. Lily pressed her lips together, trying not to think about her mother's face, pale and peaceful in that final moment. She couldn't afford to cry. Tears wouldn't feed her siblings or keep them warm on cold nights. Once again, she hummed a lullaby their mother used to sing to calm them, but her voice trembled and the notes seemed to fade into the dimness. I'm here. It's okay, she whispered as she stroked one of the baby's cheeks. A tiny hand reached for hers, forming a small, fragile fist that shattered her heart. The front door burst open with a loud bang, and Lily held her breath. The sound of unsteady boots filled the house, accompanied by the clinking of a bottle. There was a mumbled, incoherent noise, followed by a low growl. Lily felt her stomach tighten. Quickly, she wrapped the babies in an old blanket and carefully placed them in the farthest corner of the room. She pressed a finger to her lips, signaling them to stay quiet, as if they could understand, and then stood up. The figure of a man appeared in the doorway, dark and disheveled. His jacket was stained, his hair tangled. In his hand hung a dangerously empty glass bottle. "Where's my dinner?" he growled, his voice rough and full of disdain. "There's no food, Dad." "You spent all the money," Lily murmured, barely audible. She knew there was no right answer. "What did you say?" "Talking back, you ungrateful brat." The man took a step toward her, the stench of alcohol filling the air. Lily instinctively stepped back, but the man had already raised his hand. The slap took her by surprise, causing her cheek to burn. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She had learned that tears only made him angrier. "Useless," her father growled before staggering into the living room, where he collapsed heavily onto a broken-down armchair. Lily took a deep breath, letting the pain settle like an old acquaintance. This wasn't the first time, and she knew it wouldn't be the last. She returned to the twins, who had started crying, probably scared by the shouting. "It's okay. It's over now." "I'm here," she whispered gently, ignoring the sting on her face. She picked them up again, rocking them slightly, the way she had seen her mother do so many times. She remembered how her mother used to sing while preparing dinner, even when she was tired. She remembered her mother's hands, always busy but never too busy to stroke Lily's hair or kiss the twins on their foreheads. Closing her eyes for a moment, she wished with all her heart to go back to those days. But reality was a cold, unyielding wall. From the living room, the sound of snoring echoed, signaling that her father had passed out in an alcoholic sleep. Lily stood up slowly, careful not to make any noise. She placed the twins on an old mattress and slipped out to the backyard. The cold night air wrapped around her, but she didn't care. She looked up at the stars, searching for solace in the vastness of the night sky. "Mom, I don't know how much more of this I can take," she whispered, her voice breaking. The tears she had held back all day finally slid down her cheeks. But even then, she wiped them away quickly. She couldn't afford to be weak, not for herself, not for the twins. She stepped back inside, carefully closing the door. She glanced at the little ones, finally asleep. The peace on their faces filled her with a strange sense of hope. She might not be able to change her father's violence or bring her mother back, but she could promise herself one thing: she would protect them. She would find a way to give them something better. Morning came slowly, dragging with it a biting chill that seeped through the cracks in the walls. Lily had barely slept, eyes flicking to the door again and again. Her father's uneven snores had gone silent hours earlier, which only meant one thing: the storm was about to start. The twins stirred first, their soft cries threading through the dim room. Lily scooped them up, shushing urgently, praying the sound wouldn't carry. Too late. A heavy thud rattled the far wall. The door flew open, and he filled the frame, swaying, menacing. His shirt hung askew. Bloodshot eyes gleamed with liquor and rage. Useless brats, can't they be quiet for 1 minute? He snarled. Lily rose fast, planting herself between him and the babies. They're frightened, Dad. I've got them. Please don't touch them, she said, forcing steadiness into a voice that shook. He didn't hear her. Staggering closer to the bed, he grabbed one twin under the arms, holding the tiny body carelessly aloft. The baby wailed, limbs flailing. If he doesn't shut up, I'll shut him up for good. He roared, lifting his arm as if to slam the child down. No, Lily lunged, fingers clamping around his wrists with a strength she didn't know she possessed. Let him go, please. He froze for a beat, startled by her defiance, then his fury surged. He shoved her, sending her stumbling. In his stumble, his grip slipped. The baby fell straight into Lily's awkward, desperate catch. This is your fault. He spat, jabbing a shaking finger at her. If you weren't so useless, none of this. Lily said nothing. Words couldn't reach a man drowning in hate and alcohol. Her thoughts snapped into clarity. Staying meant danger. This house, this man would destroy the twins if she didn't move now. Cradling the rescued baby tight, she darted to the bed and wrapped the other twin in a blanket, hands urgent but careful. He watched, confused at first. Then understanding dawned, and his mouth twisted into a bitter laugh. You think you can run? You won't get far. She didn't answer. With both babies clutched to her chest, she bolted for the back door. Seconds, she had seconds. Her pulse hammered, fear and adrenaline flooding her limbs. The door creaked open, and cold morning air slapped her skin. But she didn't slow. Behind her, his footsteps lurched closer. She sprinted for the low fence that bordered the yard and the main road. Get back here, he bellowed, nearer now. With a frantic heave, Lily climbed, keeping the twins high and safe as she swung her leg over. She dropped onto the other side, hit the dirt, and sprang up again. Their cries rose ragged and loud, but there was no time to soothe them. Distance, she needed distance. The road stretched ahead like a tunnel with no end, but Lily refused to look back. His curses thinned behind her, and for the first time in forever, a sliver of escape cracked through the dark. The air burned her. Cheeks, winter cold, yet each step carried them farther from harm. She glanced down at the tiny wailing faces and whispered through clenched teeth, We're together, my little ones. I'll keep you safe. I swear it. She kept going, promise anchoring every stride, determination heavy as iron in her chest. The city was beginning to stir, lights flicking on, a distant engine coughing awake, but for Lily and the twins, the night hadn't released them yet. Her bare feet slapped the icy asphalt, every step a battle against the exhaustion dragging at her muscles, and still she moved away from the house, away from him, toward whatever came next. Dawn hadn't fully broken yet, but the faint rays of the sun began to peek between the buildings, bathing the deserted streets in a grayish light. Lily held one of the twins tightly against her chest, while the other rested on her right arm. Both of them were crying, their small bodies trembling despite the worn blanket wrapped around them. She hummed softly, trying to soothe them, but her voice sounded broken, as if despair was choking her from the inside. We're almost there. She murmured, though she had no idea where she was heading. The icy wind blew fiercely, and Lily paused for a moment to shield the twins from the cold. Her lips were cracked, and hunger twisted painfully in her stomach, but none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was keeping the babies safe. As daylight grew brighter, Lily kept walking. She passed an alley filled with trash bins, her nose wrinkled at the sour, nauseating stench, but her mind barely registered the disgust. She needed to find something, anything, to feed her siblings. Carefully, she placed the twins in a corner of the alley, shielding them from the wind with the blanket. Their little faces were red from the cold, but their cries had softened. Maybe they were too tired to keep crying. Lily approached one of the bins and opened it. The lid creaked, breaking the alley's silence. Inside, she found scraps of food covered in mold, rock-hard pieces of bread, and bits of plastic that once wrapped something edible. She reached in, rummaging through the trash, hoping to find something that could still be of use. "No, this can't be," she muttered, her voice choked. A wave of despair hit her hard. She fell to her knees beside the bin, her hands trembling as she tried to hold back tears. But she couldn't. Hot, silent tears streamed down her face as she buried her head in her hands. "I just want to help them, Mom. What do I do now?" she whispered, as though waiting for an answer from the emptiness. The cry of one of the twins snapped her back to reality. Lily quickly wiped her tears and returned to them. One of the little ones was awake, weakly moving their arms, while the other seemed to be asleep, though their breathing was slow and uneven. Lily held them tightly, as if her warmth could make up for everything they lacked. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But I won't give up. I'll get you out of here. I promise." With renewed determination, she got up and kept walking. She didn't know how much longer she could go on, but stopping wasn't an option. Her mother often compared life to a river, stating that regardless of the turbulence, it would always find its path. Lily clung to those words like a lifeline. As the day wore on, the exhaustion became unbearable. Each step felt like a monumental effort. Her legs trembled, and her vision began to blur. Lily knew her body was at its limit, but she couldn't stop. Not yet. Finally, she reached an empty park. She found a worn wooden bench and collapsed onto it, the twins still in her arms. The babies cried weakly, their wails sounding more like whimpers than actual cries. Lily rocked them, but her hands barely had the strength to hold them. The cold bit at her skin, and her head began to spin. Everything felt blurry, as if the world were about to fall apart. "Just a moment," she murmured, closing her eyes for an instant. But that instant turned into minutes. Her body slumped against the back of the bench, the twins still resting on her lap. The sun was high in the sky when Lily opened her eyes. Her heart beat weakly, and her muscles ached as though she had been running for days. She looked at the twins who could barely move their tiny bodies. Fear shot through her like an arrow. She knew they couldn't go on like this. She had to find help, fast. With one last effort, she got up from the bench and began walking again. But this time, her steps were slower, more unsteady. Every yard felt like an eternity. Eventually, her body gave out. Lily collapsed next to the sidewalk, her arms still holding the twins. She looked around desperately, searching for someone, anyone, who could help them. Her vision blurred again, but before everything went dark, she thought she saw a figure approaching. "Please help us," she whispered before losing consciousness, the twins still huddled against her chest. The night seemed to swallow the small, fragile bodies of the three children. Moments later, they were in a luxurious black car. The gentle hum of the engine echoed through the quiet city streets. Asher Whitman, seated behind the wheel of his luxury vehicle, barely noticed the urban landscape passing by. It was a daily routine, working late, driving home, and facing the emptiness of an enormous but silent mansion. A life filled with success, but lacking something essential. As he turned a corner onto a deserted avenue, something caught his attention on the side of the sidewalk. A figure was slumped against the cold cement. As he approached, Asher slowed the car. There, under the faint glow of a street light, he saw a young girl with two small children wrapped in faded blankets. Even from a distance, he could tell the girl wasn't moving, her head tilted to one side, while the babies barely stirred. Asher slammed on the brakes and stepped out of the car. The morning's icy air hit him immediately. He approached cautiously, assessing the situation. "Are you all right?" he asked, but there was no response. The girl, thin and pale, appeared unconscious. Her face showed signs of extreme exhaustion, and the babies on her lap let out only faint whimpers. Asher felt a pang in his chest. He had seen a lot in his life, but this raw and real scene hit him like a sledgehammer. "I can't leave them here," he murmured to himself. Crouching down beside them, with careful movements, Asher first picked up the babies, feeling how light and fragile they were. Then he carried the girl, making sure all three were wrapped warmly in blankets. He placed them in the back seat of his car, arranging them as best he could, and started the engine, his heart pounding faster than usual. The drive to his mansion was quiet, broken only by the faint cries of the babies. Asher glanced frequently in the rearview mirror, making sure they were okay. The girl remained unconscious, her breathing uneven but steady. A flood of questions filled his mind. Who were they? How had they ended up in this situation? Where was their family? Above all, he was certain of one thing: he had to help them. When he arrived home, Evelyn was already awake, preparing a cup of tea in the spacious kitchen. Hearing the front door open, she looked up curiously. She wasn't expecting Asher back so early, and certainly not with company. "What's going on?" she asked, noticing the worried expression on her husband's face. Asher didn't say anything at first. He walked in, holding the two babies, motioning toward the door where a bodyguard was carrying the girl. Evelyn dropped the cup she was holding. The sound of breaking glass echoed in the kitchen. Her eyes widened as she stared at the little ones, their faces red from the cold and marked with dirt. "Asher, who are they?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," he admitted, gently laying the babies on the living room couch. "I found them on the street. I couldn't just leave them there." Evelyn approached slowly, almost afraid to touch the little ones. When she finally leaned in, something inside her broke. She stroked the cheek of one of the babies, who opened their eyes weakly. The touch seemed to soothe them a little, and Evelyn felt tears streaming down her face. "They're so fragile," she whispered, looking at Asher with emotion-filled eyes. What could have happened to them? Meanwhile, Lily began to stir on the couch, waking with a gasp. Her large, dark eyes filled with panic as she took in the unfamiliar surroundings and the people around her. Instinctively, she searched for her siblings. "My brothers!" she exclaimed hoarsely, trying to sit up. "Easy, they're here," Asher said quickly, moving closer to calm her. "They're safe. No one will hurt them." Lily, though visibly exhausted, relaxed a little when she saw the babies nearby. Then she looked at Asher and Evelyn, her eyes filled with distrust but also gratitude. Who are you?" she asked weakly. "My name is Asher, and this is Evelyn, my wife. We found you on the street. You needed help, so we brought you here," Asher replied calmly. Lily lowered her gaze, hugging herself as if trying to protect herself. She didn't know if she could trust them, but something about Evelyn's tender expression gave her a small sense of security. Evelyn, unable to hold back, approached and knelt in front of Lily. "Sweetheart, I don't know what you've been through, but you're safe now. We can take care of you, at least for now. Please let us help you." Lily blinked, surprised by the warmth in Evelyn's voice. She wasn't used to anyone caring about her or her brothers. A lump formed in her throat, but she swallowed it quickly. She couldn't allow herself to trust just yet. Evelyn picked up the babies, a tear rolling down her cheek. She turned to Asher, a determined look in her eyes that he hadn't seen in years. "Asher, we can't let them go. Look at these children. So small, so helpless. At least let them stay for a while." Asher nodded, his expression serious but understanding. "Of course." Evelyn knew. Night had fully settled over the city, wrapping Asher and Evelyn's mansion in deep silence. broken only by the occasional creak of old wood and the faint cries of the twins. Lily was sitting in an oversized armchair, far too big for her small, curled-up frame. In front of her, Asher and Evelyn watched her intently, their faces calm but tense. Evelyn was cradling one of the babies in her arms, rocking them gently, while Asher held the other on his lap. Lily didn't know how to start. There was something disarming about the warmth in Evelyn's gaze, a contrast to everything Lily had known until now. Asher, on the other hand, remained silent, but his eyes conveyed a mix of curiosity and concern. "You don't have to tell us anything if you don't want to," Asher began in a calm voice. "But if you're going to stay here, we need to know how you ended up in this situation. We want to help you." Lily swallowed hard and looked at her siblings. The babies, now peacefully asleep, seemed completely unaware of all the pain surrounding them. That gave her strength. For them, she had to speak. "I have nowhere else to go," she started, her voice barely audible. "My mom. She died a few months ago when my brothers were born." Evelyn tensed slightly at those words, but said nothing, giving Lily the space to continue. "She was everything to us," Lily went on, her eyes fixed on the floor. "She was kind, hardworking. She did everything she could to make sure we were okay, even when we didn't have much. But when she got sick, everything changed." She paused, fighting back the tears threatening to fall. Evelyn let out a shaky sigh and glanced at Asher, who nodded slightly, encouraging her to continue. "After she died, my dad, he changed. Well, not changed. He always drank, but he used to do it in secret. Now, all he cared about was alcohol. He lost his job and started taking it out on us." Asher clenched his fists but kept his expression neutral. Evelyn, however, couldn't stop a silent tear from slipping down her cheek. "I did everything I could to take care of my brothers," Lily said, clutching her hands in her lap. "I gave them what little we had, tried to keep them warm. But he—" Her voice broke completely, and her next words were barely audible. "He tried to hurt one of them. That's why I left. I couldn't let him hurt them." Evelyn brought a hand to her mouth, unable to stifle the sob that overcame her. "You left on your own? With them?" Asher asked, his voice soft but filled with disbelief. Lily nodded. "I couldn't stay. I didn't know where to go, but it didn't matter. I just wanted to keep them safe." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unspoken emotions. Evelyn looked at the twins in her arms, their peaceful little faces, then at Lily, who seemed so much older than any 12-year-old should. It was far too much for someone so young to carry. "You're very brave, Lily," Evelyn finally said, her voice breaking but steady. "What you did. Not everyone would have done that. But you don't have to do it alone anymore. Not anymore." Lily lifted her gaze, surprised. "What do you mean?" Evelyn leaned forward, locking eyes with the girl with an intensity Lily had never seen before. "I want you to stay here. All three of you. This can be your home. We can take care of you." Her voice cracked at the end, but her words were clear. Lily felt something inside her give way. It was as if the fortress she had built to protect herself was finally crumbling. "Why?" she asked, her eyes filled with distrust and vulnerability. "Why would you do this for us?" Evelyn smiled gently, her tears glistening under the warm light of the lamp. "Because I know what it's like to want something with all your heart and not be able to have it. Because you and your siblings deserve better. And because I couldn't live with myself knowing I could have done something to help but didn't." Asher, who had been silent, nodded slowly. "Evelyn's right. We can't change what happened to you, but we can make sure you're safe now. If you want to stay, this is your home." Lily looked at both of them, her mind flooded with conflicting emotions. She wasn't used to kindness, to the idea that someone could care about her without expecting something in return. But the warmth in Evelyn's eyes and the firmness in Asher's words were hard to ignore. Finally, Lily nodded, her lips trembling as she tried to smile. "Thank you. I don't know what to say." In the days that followed, their lives slowly became intertwined with Asher and Evelyn's family. The scent of freshly baked bread filled the house. It was a warm, welcoming fragrance, so different from the cold and damp alleys Lily and her siblings had left behind. From the kitchen, Evelyn moved gracefully, preparing breakfast while softly humming a tune. She had one of the twins perched on her hip, and with her free hand, she stirred a small pot of warm milk. Lily sat at the dining table, the other twin nestled in her lap. She watched Evelyn in silence, unsure how to behave. The familiarity with which Evelyn held her younger brother, the way she whispered sweet words to him while feeding him, was something Lily hadn't seen since her mother had passed away. It was comforting, yet strange. "Would you like some more milk?" Evelyn asked, turning to her with a smile. Lily quickly shook her head. "No, thank you. I'm fine," she said quietly, her eyes falling to the cup in front of her. Evelyn gave her a knowing look but didn't press further, her smile never fading. In her heart, Evelyn understood that earning Lily's trust would take time, and she was willing to take every necessary step to build that bridge. Asher walked into the kitchen at that moment, a stack of papers in one hand and a calm expression on his face. Seeing Lily and the twins, he set the papers aside and sat across from her. "Good morning, Lily. Did you sleep well?" he asked, his kindness almost too perfect to feel real. Lily looked up, noticing how his voice gently filled the room. She nodded, though not entirely sure if it was the answer she should give. "Yes, thank you, sir," she said quickly, lowering her gaze again. "Call me Asher, okay?" He replied with a sincere smile. Then he added, "And if you need anything, anything at all, don't hesitate to ask. This is your home too." Lily nodded once more, but the phrase, "your home," echoed in her mind. How could this place be her home? She still felt like she belonged to a different world, one where the walls weren't so clean, where voices always carried a threatening tone, and where nights felt endless. During the day, Evelyn devoted all her time to the twins. She bathed them with care, changed their clothes, and made sure they were always well fed. Lily, on the other hand, watched from a distance. Although she had been the only one to care for them from the beginning, it felt strange to see someone else take on that role. Evelyn, however, always invited her to join in. "Would you like to hold him while I dry off the other one?" Evelyn would ask casually, as if she instinctively knew how to ease Lily's discomfort. Slowly, Lily began accepting those invitations. Feeling her brother's small hands in hers reminded her of the promise she had made to protect them. But this time, she wasn't alone. Meanwhile, Asher found subtle ways to connect with Lily. He showed her the house's library, filled with books she never could have imagined touching. Surely, each of us has a favorite book. Let us know the name of your favorite book and its author in the comments section below. He taught her how to use the large desk in the study and told her about the places he had visited when he was younger. Without imposing anything, he simply offered her a space where she could feel at ease. "Do you like reading?" he asked one afternoon, handing her an illustrated storybook. Lily looked at him skeptically at first, but then took the book and murmured, "My mom used to read me stories, but we didn't have many books at home." Asher didn't respond right away. Instead, he just smiled and let Lily explore the book on her own. That night, the house was quiet. Evelyn and Asher had gone to their rooms, and the twins were sound asleep in the crib Evelyn had placed near Lily's bed. Yet, sleep wouldn't come to her. She lay on her side, gazing at the ceiling as memories of her past life flooded back. Finally, unable to resist the pull, she sat up and leaned over the crib, her fingers gently caressing her siblings' cheeks as tears filled her eyes. We okay now," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "They're good. They won't hurt us." She stayed there for a moment, letting her tears flow silently. For the first time in a long while, they weren't tears of fear or despair, but of relief. The house, once cold and silent, was now alive with energy. The twins crawled across the living room floor, their laughter echoing as Evelyn tried to keep up with them. Lily, sitting on the couch with a book in hand, watched her siblings with a smile that had become increasingly natural. It was such a stark contrast to the gray days of her past that she sometimes struggled to believe it was real. Asher, seated at the dining table, observed his family with quiet satisfaction. Evelyn, who for years had avoided speaking about her pain of not being able to have children, now radiated with a renewed energy. Every day, she seemed lighter, more complete. "Aren't they amazing?" Evelyn said, looking up at Asher as one of the twins clung to her dress, trying to stand. "They are," Asher smiled, resting his chin in his hand. "Thanks to you, Evelyn." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "No, Asher, thanks to them." Lily looked up from her book and met Asher's gaze. Although she was still shy, something in the way he looked at her made her feel like she belonged there. A gentle warmth she barely understood had begun to settle in her chest. Dusk was slipping in when the doorbell sliced through the quiet. Evelyn, cradling one of the twins, went to answer. Asher lifted the other. Lily rose slowly, an inexplicable knot tightening in her stomach, and hovered near the stairs. Evelyn opened the door to a face carved in hardness. A large man stood there, eyes burning with hate, breath laced with alcohol, fists clenched. "Can I help you?" she asked, instinctively drawing the baby closer. "I'm Lily's father," he growled, gaze raking the entryway. "I've come for my kids." A shiver ran down Evelyn's spine, but her voice stayed firm. "Lily and the babies are safe here. They're not going back with you." "Safe?" He let out a bitter laugh and stepped in closer. "They're mine. If you think you can keep them, be ready to pay for it." Asher appeared behind Evelyn, eyes narrowing as he took the man in. The air went taut. "Who are you?" Asher asked, low and controlled. "I said I'm their father," the man snapped, squaring his shoulders. "I don't care what you think. If you want them here, it'll cost you." Asher moved forward, placing himself between them. Calm, but with a threat coiled in his stare. "You forfeited the right to that word the day you put them in danger. Leave now, or I call the police." The man bared his teeth, a finger trembling as he pointed at Asher. "Do you know who I am? I'm the only father those kids have. You can't shut me out." "I won't repeat myself," Asher said evenly. "Go now." The man hesitated, calculating, then gave another harsh laugh and backed down the path. "This isn't over," he spat, eyes seething. "I'll be back and you'll regret crossing me." As soon as he was gone, Evelyn slammed the door, hands shaking. Asher stayed at the window, jaw tight as he watched the figure vanish into the dark, anger and worry warring in his eyes. From the staircase, Lily, who had heard everything, felt her pulse racing. She said nothing, but fear crept in. Her father did not accept defeat. Outside, the storm howled, battering the house until the windows groaned. Rain hammered the roof in a relentless roar. The twins slept in their room. Lily, spent, had turned in early. The house was still, yet the night pressed close, an invisible threat wrapping around it. Around 3 a.m., a sharp sound shattered the silence. Light sleeper that she was, Lily bolted upright. It had come from downstairs, someone forcing the back door. Her heart thudded as heavy, uneven steps sounded below. She slipped from bed, but another noise stopped her, the creak of a crib. Ice formed in her gut. She ran for the door, then froze. The room was empty. The twins' crib stood disheveled, blankets strewn across the floor. An open window yawned to the storm, wind and rain soaking everything. "No!" she cried, voice splintering as she rushed to the window. In the darkness, A figure moved quickly away. Her scream jolted Evelyn and Asher awake. Evelyn, robe trailing, reached the room and went rigid at the sight. "Where are they?" she whispered, then the whisper ripped into a scream. "Where are my babies?" Asher arrived in time to catch her as her knees buckled. Evelyn sobbed uncontrollably, clutching his chest as she repeated over and over, "This can't be. This can't be." Lily stood by the window, staring into the rain with tears streaming down her face. Her mind was flooded with guilt. She had promised to protect her siblings, but now they were in the hands of someone she knew wouldn't show mercy. "It's my fault," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "I should have done something. I should have been with them." Asher, his face tense, tried to stay calm. He helped Evelyn into a chair before turning to Lily. "It's not your fault, Lily. Listen, we're going to find them. But I need you to stay calm, okay?" His voice was firm yet reassuring, a steady anchor in the midst of chaos. Asher pulled out his phone and quickly dialed the police, explaining the situation with precision and urgency. Meanwhile, Evelyn kept crying, her trembling hands covering her face. Lily stayed close to her, trying to offer comfort, though she could barely control her own breathing. The sound of the phone ringing broke the tension. A few minutes later, Asher answered immediately, but the voice on the other end wasn't the police. It was him. "Did you really think you could keep them away from me forever?" The man's voice was filled with venom. "Your rules, your money. None of that matters to me. The kids are mine, and if you want to see them again, you know what you have to do." Asher clenched his jaw and walked into the study to avoid alarming Evelyn and Lily further. "Listen, you have no right to them. Hand them over now, or you'll face the consequences." The man let out a bitter laugh. "Consequences? Is that a threat? The kids are with me. If you don't want anything to happen to them, deposit the money into the account I'm about to send you, and don't call the police. Or this will be the last you hear of them." The call ended abruptly, leaving Asher standing there with the phone in his hand, his chest full of suppressed rage. He stood in silence for a moment, trying to process the threat, before returning to Evelyn and Lily. Asher knelt beside Evelyn, who looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. "We're going to get them back. I promise," he said, gripping her hands firmly. Evelyn nodded weakly, but her eyes still showed deep fear. Asher then turned to Lily. "I need you to trust me, Lily. We're going to get them back together." Lily, though still trembling, nodded. For the first time since she had arrived at this house, she felt like she wasn't alone in her fight. Night had fully fallen when the headlights of the patrol cars illuminated the path leading into the woods. Wet leaves crunched under the tires as the convoy moved slowly, guided by the faint beam of a flashlight pointing the way. The air was thick with moisture and an oppressive silence, broken only by the low murmur of police communications. In the back seat of one of the vehicles, Evelyn clasped her hands in her lap. Her fingers trembled, and the weight of uncertainty seemed to press her deeper into the seat. Asher, sitting next to her, maintained a stiff posture, though his face appeared calm. His eyes betrayed an inner storm. In a more distant corner, Lily observed the scene, hugging herself tightly, her thoughts consumed by guilt and worry. "We're here," the police chief said, bringing the car to a stop. In the distance, barely visible among the trees, stood a small wooden cabin, faintly illuminated by a hanging lamp on the porch. The cabin looked like it was about to collapse under the weight of time and neglect, but the danger it concealed inside made it even more terrifying. "Stay here," the police chief ordered Asher and Evelyn as the officers got out of their vehicles and began to take positions. Asher pressed his lips together, wanting to protest, but he knew he couldn't interfere. He held Evelyn's hand tightly as she seemed on the verge of collapse. "We're going to get them back, Evelyn. Trust them," he whispered, more to convince himself than her. From the back seat, Lily murmured, "Please ... Make sure they're okay, they ... They can't take any more. Asher nodded, though he couldn't find the words to respond. He knew anything he said would fall short in the face of the anguish consuming them. From the car, the three watched as the officers silently surrounded the cabin, their silhouettes blending into the darkness. A couple of flashlights flickered in the distance, like tiny stars in a lightless sky. The police chief signaled, and the officers began moving closer. Time seemed to stop. Each second stretched into eternity. Evelyn kept her eyes fixed on the cabin, her lips moving in silent prayers. Asher stayed focused, while Lily dug her nails into the palms of her hands. Suddenly, the silence shattered. An enraged shout came from inside the cabin, followed by a loud crash. The flashlights moved quickly, and the sound of boots hitting the ground filled the air. "Police, let go of the children now," a voice shouted from inside. Evelyn covered her mouth with her hands, stifling a sob. Asher gripped her shoulder tightly, as if that gesture could keep her grounded. A few minutes later, which felt like centuries, the cabin doors burst open. An officer ran out, carrying a baby wrapped in a dirty blanket. Another officer followed close behind with the second baby. Both were crying faintly, their tiny faces flushed and their little bodies visibly trembling from the cold. "My babies!" Evelyn screamed, running toward them before Asher could stop her. She fell to her knees in front of the officer holding the first twin, stretching out her arms in desperation. The officer leaned down to hand the baby to her, and Evelyn cradled the child against her chest as if afraid they might vanish at any moment. "Oh my God," she murmured through tears, kissing the baby's forehead. The skin felt intensely hot to the touch. "They're so warm. They have a fever." Asher, following closely behind Evelyn, took the second twin into his arms. His jaw quivered as he looked at the baby, who could barely open their eyes. "We've got you. We've got you now," he whispered, his voice breaking. Lily, watching the scene from a distance, finally let the tears fall down her cheeks. For the first time in days, she felt a mix of relief and a sharp pang of guilt. She hadn't been able to protect them, but they were alive. The officers quickly escorted them back to the vehicles. Evelyn and Asher never let go of the twins, whispering soothing words as the car sped toward the hospital. The babies' fevers were still climbing, and their faint whimpers pierced the hearts of their adoptive parents. Lily, sitting quietly in the back seat, watched Evelyn and Asher. For the first time, she understood what it meant to have someone who would fight for you, no matter the cost. Her hands trembled as she leaned toward the twins and murmured, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll never let anything like this happen again." When they arrived at the hospital, doctors quickly took the twins, rushing them into the emergency room. Evelyn clung to Asher, unable to let go, as she watched them disappear behind the double doors. Morning sunlight streamed through the hospital windows, bathing the room in a warm glow. The twins rested in small cribs beside the bed where Evelyn sat. Her face, still showing traces of exhaustion, was lit with an expression of deep relief and love. Asher stood next to her, one hand resting on her shoulder, watching the babies as they slept. "They've improved so much since yesterday," the doctor said as he walked in with a reassuring smile. "The fevers have broken, and with a few more days of rest, they'll be completely fine." Evelyn sighed with relief as she closed her eyes. Tears began to fill her eyes as she gazed at the twins. She leaned toward one of them, gently caressing his cheek. "Thank you," she murmured, though she wasn't sure who she was speaking to. The doctor, the universe, or simply those two little miracles who had survived it all. Lily, who had been sitting quietly in a corner, watched silently. She had spent the night awake, worried about her siblings and feeling guilty for everything they had endured. But as she saw Evelyn and Asher caring for the twins with so much love, something inside her began to change. Evelyn looked up at Lily, noticing her downcast expression. She walked across the room and knelt in front of her. "Lily, I want you to know something, she said softly, taking the girl's hands in hers. This is not your fault. What happened doesn't define who you are. What matters is that you're here, that you love them, and that you would do anything for them. That's what counts. Lily couldn't hold back any longer. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she threw herself into Evelyn's arms. It was the first time she had allowed herself to cry openly since everything had started. Between sobs, she whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for not leaving us." Evelyn held her tightly, stroking her hair. Asher watched the scene, his chest swelling with a mix of pride and love. When Evelyn sat back down, she took Asher's hand and said, "These kids don't just need a house. They need a family. A real one." Asher nodded slowly, glancing at the twins and then at Lily. There was a solemn expression on his face as he knelt in front of the girl, bringing himself to her eye level. "Lily, I want you to hear this directly from me," he said, his voice steady but warm. "You and your brothers are not just our responsibility. We're not just the people taking care of you. We are your family. And I want you to know that you will never, ever be alone again." Lily looked at him, her wide eyes brimming with emotion. She nodded slowly, unable to find the words to respond. A few days later, when the twins were strong enough to come home, Asher and Evelyn called an attorney to take the next step, formally adopting Lily and the twins. The idea had been in both of their minds from the start, but recent events had solidified their decision. They needed to ensure that nothing, not even the shadow of the past, could separate this family. The meeting with the attorney was brief but emotional. Evelyn couldn't contain her tears as she signed the documents, officially establishing them as the parents of the 3 children. Asher, though more reserved, gripped Evelyn's hand firmly, as if the gesture sealed his commitment. When they returned home, everything felt different. The house, which had once been a temporary refuge, was now a true home. Lily began decorating the room she shared with the twins, hanging up little drawings she had made during the days in the hospital. Meanwhile, Evelyn and Asher worked together to turn an empty room into a playroom for the kids. The courtroom was completely silent, except for the soft rustling of documents as the judge reviewed them carefully. Lily, sitting between Evelyn and Asher, held her adoptive mother's hand tightly, while the twins slept peacefully in their carriers on the other side of the room. Though no one spoke, the air was thick with anticipation. After reviewing all the documents and considering the circumstances, I hereby declare Evelyn and Asher Whitman to be the official parents of Lily, Rowan, and Callum, the judge said solemnly, though a slight smile tugged at his lips. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Whitman. You have a beautiful family." A muffled sob escaped Evelyn as she squeezed Lily's hand. Tears streamed freely down her cheeks, but they were tears of pure joy. Asher, though more composed, smiled broadly as he placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. "We did it," Evelyn whispered, looking at Asher with bright, tear-filled eyes, unable to contain her emotions. Lily threw herself into Evelyn's arms. For the first time, she heard the words she had always longed to hear. "You are our daughter. Lily, you always will be." Days after the judge's ruling, as the family celebrated at home, Asher and Evelyn began discussing something that had been on their hearts for a while. "Asher, have you ever thought about how much more we could do?" Evelyn asked as she watched the twins crawling across the living room. Asher looked up from his book, curiosity evident on his face. "Do you mean giving more children a home? There are so many who need what these little ones have now." Evelyn insisted, her eyes filled with determination. "I think we can do more." Asher nodded slowly, letting Evelyn's words settle in his mind. Finally, he smiled. "You're right. If we can offer others what Lily and the twins have now, why not do it?" A few weeks later, the family visited a nearby child protection center. There, they met Owen, a 7-year-old boy with a shy demeanor but a gaze full of curiosity. and Sophie, a 5-year-old girl who, despite her young age, seemed to carry more sadness than any child should. "Would you like to live with us?" Evelyn asked gently, kneeling in front of Sophie. Sophie looked at Owen before answering, as if seeking his approval. When he gave a slight nod, Sophie murmured, "Can we have a real mom and dad?" Evelyn held back tears as she took Sophie's small hands in hers. "Not only will you have a mom and dad, but you'll also have an older sister and 2 little brothers. We'll have a complete family." Owen and Sophie officially joined the family weeks later, and the house that was already full of love now overflowed with life. Lily embraced her new role as the eldest sibling with a mix of pride and responsibility. Although she initially worried about how to connect with Owen and Sophie, she quickly discovered they had much in common. Owen, shy but intelligent, looked up to Lily, seeing her as a role model. Sophie, a bundle of restless joy, adored the twins and trailed Lily through the house, copying her every move. "Hey Owen, wanna help me decorate the twins' room?" Lily asked one afternoon, catching him with a book in hand. Owen looked up, surprised, then offered a small smile. "Sure, I'd love to." Bit by bit, Lily realized protecting her siblings wasn't hers to shoulder alone. She had an older brother who stepped up and a younger sister who looked up to her, shifting her understanding of what family truly meant. One bright afternoon, everyone gathered in the backyard. The twins tumbled in the grass with Sophie while Owen helped Asher set out a snack table. Lily sat on the new swing Asher had hung, watching them all with a quiet, contented smile. Evelyn came over and settled beside her. "What's on your mind?" she asked softly. "I never thought this could be real," Lily said, turning to Evelyn with gratitude and love. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Evelyn squeezed her hand. "You've given us more than we could have asked for. Because of you, this family feels whole." As the sun slid lower, washing the yard in gold, Asher walked over with a tray of lemonade. "May I interrupt this special moment?" he teased. Evelyn laughed and leaned toward him. "Never. It's perfect because we're all here." They gathered around the table, trading stories and laughter while the kids squealed and chased each other. In the middle of the happy noise, Evelyn murmured to Asher, "This is the dream we carried for so long. This is home. A complete family." Asher nodded, arms circling her shoulders as he looked at their children. In that instant, he knew every fight and hardship had been worth it, because at last, they were exactly where they were meant to be, together. If this film touched your heart, leave a like and remember to subscribe for more meaningful stories. Share your thoughts and your own experiences with us. Every word you offer helps build a strong, lasting community where everyone can connect. And don't miss the wonderful stories coming soon. We're here to bring you the best picks, rich in heart and full of joy. See you there.